Hi, folks. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. I have a confession. I did have to check what day of the week it was with my secretary. Jimmy,
Nice.
You're now my secretary.
Okay.
Just in case you were wondering.
I'm not wearing a frock, and I'm not doing that.
And I promise to keep my hands to myself. How's that? We don't have a lot of choice today, guys. We have to go with Dominic, I can drive when I can't see, Cummings.
Right.
We were possibly going to do a show right after his broadcast. The first time I think that a SPAD has ever done a journalist's interview broadcast on behalf of a government in the UK. Can you remember any time it's been done before?
Nah, it's never done, mate. And frankly, I'd question the legitimacy of him being given that platform. It just shows you how important he is to Boris and this government.
Well, before we get on to the ridiculous excuses he made, does anybody believe a word he said? Stuart?
No. I believe David Cameron called him a career psychopath.
I would have fired him.
Oh, no, that's before he even met him.
No, he was Gove's SPAD at the time.
Oh, right, okay.
He was an advisor to Gove, and Cameron fired him from under Gove.
He is, don't forget, he is the master. He does master classes in diversion, in lying, in massaging the message. So every word he said, he's a genius at telling lies about.
Jimmy?
Well, it was entertaining. Let's be honest. If he decided just to make a statement, he might have got away with it. But the fact is, he decided he thought he was smart enough to do an Arnie Vinnick and take questions. And the minute his statement was over and he started taking the questions, he proved his inabilities and proved why he works in the background. I
do think it'll have been a steep learning curve for him, because I'll bet you he stood in the background while people he's spadding for, people he's advising, go in front of the cameras and make a mess of it. Because he didn't do well.
No, he didn't.
He hummed and hawed. There was long silences while he pretended to think about the next lie.
Well, particularly around the bits that were most unbelievable, like taking a 45-mile drive or whatever it was each way, just to check out your eyesight. That's a ludicrous thing to say, and clearly he hadn't practiced that lie enough to make it sound believable in any way, shape or form.
Well, I'd love to know why couldn't he drive around his parents' farm to check his eyesight on private roads where no member of the public was put at risk.
No, obviously there's the possibility that it was a small dead kitten thrown onto the mix, just so that becomes a headline in the papers the next day.
I think it's more to the point he just didn't want to admit that him and his missus had went to a beauty spot because it was her birthday.
Dave Woods, you'll remember Dave Woods from the radio days, Stuart.
Oh, right.
Dave tweeted me a wee cracker at the end of it. Today's show is brought to you by the words reasonable in circumstances. So basically, bullshit, absolute crap.
Well, I'm not sure he believed it, but I'm pretty certain that the only people he's convinced who he needs to convince, not as far as I'm concerned. He'll probably survive, because the people that he needed to convince were enough of the parliamentary Tory party so that there wasn't a revolt there, and there's probably not going to be one. And the journalist, doesn't matter if he convinces him, or the public for that matter, because with an 80-seat majority, Boris is going to stick by him.
I mean, essentially, it's a bit like a Trump story. He's just got to convince his base, the Brexiteer base, and they'll swallow it whole.
Here's a question: do all the journalists know his wife Mary?
Yes.
Right. Is that the reason they didn't have to ask the obvious question? Does your wife drive?
Aye, that's probably the reason, but one of them should have thought to ask him it, just because the rest of the country doesn't live in the Westminster bubble and isn't part of the hacks round about them. So we don't know about the wife in that manner.
Well, sure get a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe somebody at his door. No, the only reason I could think of that the question wasn't asked is that they all know she can't drive.
Well, the problem
That
is
would have been the gotcha moment they were all looking for.
Well, the problem is she can drive, mate, and she's written about driving in the past when she lived in America.
Well, so why was he doing any driving if he couldn't see? I'm
assuming they maybe thought that he would expect that question and had a nice fancy answer lined up for it. Maybe that's why they didn't ask him.
Well, what other questions did they not ask? Did anybody come think of them?
The one that got me, mate, and I know he talked about suitable childcare possibilities in London, but nobody asked him if he'd really explored it. You've got to ask, how, given his job, given his contacts and his influence, how is it that a millionaire married to the millionaire daughter of a millionaire baronet can't find suitable childcare in London? They could have paid people thousands to watch their bairn if they were that bothered about it. Or alternatively, his brother-in-law could have watched the bairn, who he's pretty pally with apparently, or the wife. Well, Beth Rigby asked Gove a cracker, are you not upset, Mr. Grove, that your good pal of 20 years didn't feel confident in phoning you for help? I've seen a few beauties, mate. Somebody else suggested that if you've got to drive 260 miles to find suitable childcare, shouldn't you consider that the need to drive 260 miles points out to you that you're a bit of a...
No friends. Dominic, no pals. I think most of the feedback I've had is all about his body language and the fact that he's clearly lying. You know, most of the feedback I've been getting, that very little about the detail, because the detail was all it's immaterial, really. It's just to take your mind, or take your eye off the ball, which was what he's done, and how important he is, and how important it is to the government and all the rest of it. I'm sorry, yeah, I totally disagree with you, Stuart. The detail is what's going to hang him, because basically, he told half a dozen lies in that. Yeah, and that's what's going to get him. People are going to say, right, if he's lying about that, what else is he lying about? I mean, we know he lied about Brexit, but the usual excuse for that is, oh, it's a campaign, and let's say what you want in a campaign. He's now part of the government, whether he likes it or not, whether he believes it or not. He's just essentially been given a platform that very few government ministers would get. So, what are you saying, Norrie, that he's more at risk now than he was yesterday? No, I think what's more at risk than before, 2 minutes before that interview, if he'd walked away, the Tory government, Boris's government anyway, rather than just a Tory government, but Boris Johnson's government was safer than it was after he finished. Oh, I think I agree there. He shouldn't have done it. He was an idiot. Somebody was saying, well, he didn't show any arrogance. Well, the arrogance was there in imagining that you could get away with that. That's how arrogant he was. He showed enough arrogance to make people wait half an hour after telling them that it'd be 4 o'clock. Well, exactly. And that's called playing somebody. It's like, I'll meet you under the clock at Central Station at 5:30. The arrogance was there. And then you're waiting 20 minutes and they don't show up. You feel played. The arrogance was there in as much as he actually did it. But that's what I'm saying. The very fact he acted like he was a minister. A minister in those circumstances
would have made a statement to the House. The House would have asked for clarity from the minister. He would have stood up in the House, made his statement. He wouldn't have been sitting in the Rose Garden.
And not, by the way, Boris wouldn't have let anybody else sit in the Rose Garden, because it's giving that legitimacy to the press conference that is only afforded to the Prime Minister. He basically platformed a spad and elevated him, which we all knew anyway, but he elevated him to Assistant Prime Minister.
Well, that's what all I was going to say. Your grammar's wrong, because Dominic's the boss and Boris just does what he's told.
That is definitely the impression that I came away with. That this wasn't a decision Boris Johnson took. This was a decision an arrogant B took. He actually thought he could go out there and lie and the public would believe him.
It's just because he thinks he's smart. He thinks he's a genius, mate. But there's legal minds at the moment picking apart what he said. That Joe Moam QC is looking for anyone who's been fined under the lockdown legislation to get in touch and tell him their stories, because they're looking to raise a class action against the government to get all the fines repaid.
Well, that's the bottom line. There was a policeman phoned into LBC this morning and basically said yesterday he had 3 different people, 2 of whom specifically said, look, if Dominic Cummings can do it, I can do it. And the other one said, well, none of the government are bothering about the rules. Why should I?
Well, and there's that thing, mate. He's still making out that because his childcare problem was so acute, according to him, that was an exceptional circumstance. There's no exceptional circumstance. The only reason, the bit of that tiny wee bit in the legislation that he's using was for safeguarding. That was for women who get battered by their husbands.
Child abuse and domestic abuse.
Stuff like that. It was safeguarding has a specific meaning in English law, and it's to get people out of a threatening situation. That wasn't a threatening situation because he's got family there, and as I say, he's got a couple of $1 million in the bank. If him and his missus were that bad, they could have afforded childminders.
It's kind of, you just want one of the journalists to turn around and say, wait a minute, what the bleep do you think the population of this country are? How stupid, gullible do you think we are?
Well,
seriously trying to tell me you couldn't get childcare in London?
Yeah. Can I come back to just the structure of it? I noticed that Gary Gibbon, was he the first one to get his question? It was very near the start. Gary, says he's the Channel 4 fella.
He had the 2 slavers first before Gary Gibbon got to go.
He was the first one to ask a telling question.
Yeah, and so apart from that, what was it? Beth Rigby and Laura Koonsberg. I didn't see that first bit.
Laura Koonsberg and
Robert Peston went first, and then Gibbon got tore into him, then Beth Rigby, and then frighteningly, a boy for the Daily Mail absolutely stomped all over, and I'm first time in my life I've been a cheerleader for the Daily Mail. But
this is the questions I'm interested in, because, as I say, we saw the way the headlines in the papers were going over the weekend, the different newspaper groups which were backing him and those against him. And the Daily Mail were definitely against him. Murdoch.
I wouldn't say Murdoch. What I would say about this is the Daily Mail is quite good at gauging the temperature of that Middle Englandy, Brexity, Tory voting group. And if the Daily Mail are out to get Cummings, Boris Johnson's made a misjudgment. Because they'll want to get their own way, and if it means pulling Boris Johnson's guts out his ears, they'll do it.
That was it. Jason Groves, he absolutely stomped on him, and what was it he said to him? You went for a drive, you went for a walk, you sat by a river, and he was really, really in his face about it. And all of these things, we were told we couldn't do. I mean, in Scotland, we're told we still can't do them. But certainly, at that time in April, none of that was acceptable. I mean, Michael Gove came out and said it was okay for him to drive to a beauty spot and have a walkabout. Not when he'd done it, it wasn't.
Right.
That particular rule didn't change until he got back to London.
And I'm going to show you a clip of Michael Gove trying to defend this.
This is the driving, is it?
Yeah. Here we go. Michael Gove claiming it's all right to drive when you can't see.
Would you go on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight?
I have, on occasions in the past, driven with my wife in order to make sure that what's the right way of putting it?
I'm staggered. I don't know how you're going to get out of this one, but it's going to be fun.
No. I think people who know me would know that I'm not an authority on driving, and that I'm not the best person in the world to ask detailed questions about driving.
No, I merely asked you if you've ever been on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight, and you said you had. I mean, why not go to Specsavers?
Well, I've subsequently got in. No, the point that I was seeking to make is that I'm not an authority on driving. As someone who took 7 attempts to pass their driving test.
Unbelievable. I'm not an authority on driving. You're not an authority on being anything but a liar.
I'm not an authority on being
Jesus.
a human being.
Well.
Jimmy, next time the licensing board come after you for something for the taxi, you'll be able to turn around and say, I was just testing my sight.
I was just saying, Michael, I took advice from Michael Gove, and I'm afraid he outranks you, Mr. Cab Inspector.
Of all the things you would never, ever do behind the wheel of a car.
Aye.
So before we go too far down, one or two other things that we haven't discussed at all, even yesterday before we got to today's live show, what Dominic was wearing. Now, he always turns up in a beanie hat, scruffy, unshaven. He cleaned up his act and wore a white shirt, but also sitting down. Now, if you sit down, you can hide your legs from the cameras, which can give you away, your body language away, if you're standing there shuffling and things. It was so carefully managed, and of course, making everybody wait.
Sorry, Stuart. You can think about his body language. You can't make a judgment on his body language unless you actually know him. When was the last time you saw him do anything but stand at the back of a room?
I'm sorry, Norrie. There are experts in body language. Have you never been to a body language seminar or anything? You go to college, you get them.
The one and only memory I've got of him doing anything for any length of time on camera was giving a talk to the Brexit foot soldiers. Do you remember that? He was in front of a screen, and I would have said he was on speed.
Well, I mean, that's the other side of the coin. Apparently, everything we know about the guy is he's brusque, arrogant, like this all the time, and he was so smooth yesterday. It was the very opposite of everything we know about him.
Well, he did look tightly clamped down, I'll give you that.
Maybe he had some drugs, something to calm him down.
He was making, come on, as I say, before the reporters got at him, it was a consummate performance. He'd done very well. He started out, I mean, he was barefaced lies, but he started out with contrition. He asked for people to understand, and he appealed, he actually instructed people that if they gave him a chance, they would see that what he'd done was reasonable. I mean, it was a superb performance, right up to the point that the reporters made a diddy out of him.
What, you wanted the violins to play?
Absolutely, mate, it was brilliantly done. If he'd done that to camera without reporters anywhere near him, the people would be looking to elect him Prime Minister.
I'm not sure I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it was superbly written. I'm not sure he delivered it quite the way it should have been. I agree he started well. I mean, he actually, at one point I was thinking, well, you know, and then I thought, no, it's Dominic Cummings. It's coming out of his mouth.
Well, some of the stuff that's since come out, mate, the thing that where he tried to rewrite history and tell us that he'd written an article about coronavirus last year, and certainly the alternative media have pointed out, no, he didn't. Coronavirus wasn't mentioned in that blog that he actually wrote. Or it is now. But the problem, that mention of coronavirus was added a day after he came back from Durham.
Yeah.
Presumably because he knew he'd been seen, and that was him then starting to write the story that he was going to tell us when this all came out.
Well, talking about him being seen, did anybody else notice that every time the car stopped or somebody got out of the car, there was somebody in the distance that they didn't interact with?
Aye.
Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
The old guy that took his number plate, there was somebody in the car park at the time, but we didn't.
He just had to reinforce that at all times he was obeying social distancing rules. Even when his wife went to a hospital, I mean, they had to point out to you yesterday that his wife was ill enough for him to think she had coronavirus, and then well enough a few days later to stay the night at a Durham hospital with her son.
Right, I didn't hear anybody ask about his security detail. This is he doesn't have a security detail.
No.
Have you watched them coming out of his house on these live TV shots, and the guy in the background who's always like about 10 feet behind him?
He doesn't have a security detail. He may have one now, but he didn't have one at the time.
You believe that the Prime Minister's senior advisor of the United Kingdom didn't have a security detail? I don't believe that.
Sure. His father phoned Durham police to inform them that Dominic Cummings was in his house. That was the first time that Durham police knew anything about it. If he had a security detail, they'd have told Durham police he was on the road.
I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't have some sort of bear following him about now. But I can think of no reason that they could have justified it before this hoo-ha.
Alistair Campbell
that's my money that's paying for it, and I want the guy taken off.
Alistair Campbell specifically pointed to the bear that was following him about yesterday, and also specifically pointed to the fact that was the first time he'd ever had any security.
All right.
It's like, I mean, it's part of that thing that they did for, who was it? Who was the Scottish Tory female MP that, was she not a Labour MP, that suddenly needed security because cybernats were being nasty to her online? Who was that?
Oh, I can't remember.
Going to a party conference and had to have bodyguards.
So not bodyguards from the left wing of the Labour Party.
Well, it was just a way of basically going, I'm under threat, feel sorry for me.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what he done as well. When he was saying yesterday that his house was a target, how could his house possibly have been a target at the end of March? We were under complete lockdown at that point. Nobody's allowed to hang about outside his house. So how could it have been a target?
I always get a laugh at that. My house is a target because I've got 15 guys with cameras to take still shots and movies of anybody that attacks my house.
Mm-hmm.
Try to think where you could get better protection than our intrepid doorstepping journalists.
And let's be honest, mate, he's no been, given how controversial a character he is, I think you'll have seen him doorstepped, maybe a dozen times since Boris Johnson gave him that job. It's no like they're there every morning. There's usually one or two of them. When you've seen him doorstepped in the past, there's only been a couple. It's only this week that there's been a scrum of photographers there. Because he's dull and he's boring, he looks like a bag of shit. And frankly, none of the paps are going to sell pictures of him because they've all got pictures of him climbing into the back of your car.
Right, apart from all this British government stuff, will this have any effect on the support for independence in Scotland? This total incompetence and, elitism.
I'm not sure it makes much difference, does it?
I don't think it'll make much of a difference, Stuart, but I think it might add another couple of points to the actual percentage that they're ahead. I think the Tories I'm not sure the SNP will gain much, but I think the Tories will lose votes because Jackson Carlaw, throughout it all, doing his whole hiding away thing. Even Ruth Davidson, I mean, she appeared again this morning for Sky Television to describe her as the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, which I'm sure Jackson would be delighted about. But they all went into hiding over the weekend.
Oh, I missed that.
Over the parapet.
Well, sticking with Scottish politics, is Jackson Carlaw's caught on a sugary peg over this?
Oh, I think we saw that with Ruth appearing last week. Did we not?
I think so. And the fact that Adam Tompkins and Murdo Fraser have called for Cummings to go, and Douglas Ross has resigned from the government. And by the way, I also noticed that the number 10 spokesman, now it must have been the same one that was on duty on Saturday night that gave such a ridiculous comment about campaigning newspapers, but he described Douglas Ross about an hour and a half ago as Mr. Nobody. I do wonder if Scottish Tories are going to take that lying down and accept being treated by London the way that the rest of Scots are, because normally they've got a wee bit of
I have to admit, that surprised me. I didn't expect that.
I think it's fair play to him, mate. If it's about principle, shall we take it on face value and say if it's about principle, then he's done an honourable thing, or do we think he's just worried about his 500-seat majority?
Well, here's a question for the pair of you. Is there any circumstance of which the Tories, this particular Tory government, would decide that they'd be better off without Scotland?
Oh yeah, I actually think there'll be, within the English Tory cohort, there will be people saying get rid of them, just as there have always been people saying get rid of Northern Ireland.
Yeah, the problem with that is, mate, any of them that have any understanding in economics will know that as much as they tell us oil's worth nothing, they can't afford to get rid of Scotland because of the assets that Scotland has.
Well, I think it's about the change in the Tory party. The One Nation Tory party is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
These Brexiteers are not One Nation Tories. They're not even, if you like, English Tories. You know, they're globalists, they're neocons. What they're looking for is the power, not just to control the UK, but through money to control the world. It sounds like a ridiculous thing to say when it comes out of my mouth, I have to be honest.
Yeah, well, we know who backs the likes of Gove and Cummings. We know whose playbook they've been working from, Steve Bannon. He's been keeping a low profile lately. But the Elliots are still important players in UK politics. Tufton Street, that address, seems to be the nest of all these people that are actually pulling strings in politics in this country.
Well, I think Steve Bannon's got a problem now because his profile's too high.
Well, I've not heard too much about him for a while.
And I think that there's a reason for that. I think he's trying to stay under the radar. I mean, the last time we heard about him, he was visiting all these right-wing dictatorships and potential dictatorships.
Well, he set up a base in Italy, did he not?
Well, Italy, Hungary, Poland, all around those ex-communist states.
Aye, but his biggest problem is all these ex-communist states in Italy and Spain are desperately having to take bailout funds from the European Union. So the right wing in all of those countries is having to shut up whilst that country is bailed out by the European Central Bank.
Well, Spain's supposed to be being run by a lefty government at the moment, is it not?
Yeah.
It is, but the right wing in Spain are still quite big. Their idea of left wing, they used to have, you had serious socialists and serious communists in Spain, but their idea of left wing these days is just left to centre.
They've got quite a lot of separate left wing parties that are quite far left. But what amazed me when I was across there, when I was in Barcelona for their referendum, was the brass neck of the fascists. I mean, nay shame. They were out there with their swastikas and threatening to shoot people and all the rest of it. We'll put you up against the wall when we win the election, you know? I mean, I found it really disturbing. but it's a normal part of their political life in Spain. The Franco people
it's a normal part of
still there.
Europe. I mean, the right wing and the National Front in France aren't shy.
Aye, I suppose you're right.
I think I'm a bit more worried that we're missing an awful lot. Of what's going on with all this Cummings stuff and that. There's Jaguar Land Rover asked for £1 billion bailout yesterday.
I noticed that.
And it looks like they're going to get it.
Yeah.
I mean, are we seriously going to watch big companies?
Are they not a German company?
They're bloody part Indian owned, didn't they? Tata own them, don't they?
Yeah, I think so, Tata.
But are we going to seriously watch these massive companies getting
bailout?
They're not selling anymore.
Well, what have they been paying for?
Nobody's buying any cars.
Yeah, but do they not own their own plant? It's not as if they're paying rent.
Well, I don't know.
They must still be building, mate. They must still have.
Well,
I think I'm not sure they furloughed all their workers.
Well, they had the opportunity to.
I mean, you're looking at if they're, as I say, you've got huge companies. Are we going to watch big companies siphoning billions of pounds for this London government? Meanwhile, what we need in Scotland is very different. You know, we've talked before about the support for small and medium businesses that really isn't there at the moment. That was quite a big business actually, the wet bus, but the one with the 7 hotels in Scotland. But what also went was a couple of the Wallace Arnold went, Shearings. Those are important businesses to Scotland because they take a lot of people up to the Highlands. There's loads of hotels up there. There's loads of wee businesses. We need sectoral support. We didn't need companies like Jaguar Land Rover taking £1 billion that could actually make a huge difference to thousands of businesses in Scotland.
To me, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, because they are tourist destinations of a different sort to London, York, places like that, the kind of support we need is for small businesses.
Aye, and we're just going to be an afterthought.
I'm sorry.
It's something you really notice if you go to England, and there's an awful lot more factories still running down there than there are in Scotland. There's a lot more factory jobs. When I first went to England, I was surprised, how many factory jobs there were. There's still loads of them.
Well, I think that might well be the hit that makes the difference to a future referendum result.
I noticed that I know it was a bank holiday yesterday, but it was quite noticeable just how busy BBC News done a spiel, how busy the beaches and resorts were in England and how not busy they were in the other 3 countries. To the point where I noticed BBC are today running a story, or they have been running one all morning, about the new regulations and the opening up of retail in the UK. And they describe it as such in the UK. I'm sorry, non-essential shops are opening on June the 15th in England. So why they're saying it's in the UK? Haven't the SNP already complained to the BBC about this?
That presser that Boris Johnson gave, you should be able to arrest him for that. Seriously, if that was about screwing the devolved administrations, I don't know what it was about. If it wasn't intentional, the man is a complete and utter muppet.
Well, I think can we just mention a wee bit the First Minister's announcement today, because that links into that. What's very different in Scotland, that she announced the launch of the Test and Protect programme, and which will launch on Thursday. Yeah. And we weren't expecting that to be announced today. And judging by the questions from the press and the Tories, you'd have thought that they weren't ready to launch it because they didn't have the testing ready. But this is all going to happen starting on Thursday, and our whole world is going to change.
Well, I mean, the way the Scottish government have been laying things out, I think is quite clever. I think their timing's been pretty good, because she's giving details now before Thursday before the official announcement, it's happening from today, which will be Thursday. So the press can go through them with a fine-tooth comb, ask all the stupid questions that they're inevitably going to ask. Yeah. And she's going to be able to run through that, and then come Thursday, when they publish the actual document of instructions, the rules, all that should have been ironed out.
So it's not just that. Think about it. Can you think of a similar program that's working down in England?
No. What you've had in England is they've said that they're going to have this, that, and the next thing operating. Their contact tracers, for example, I believe they've got 25,000 or 26,000. They've done some Diddy online course, or some of them have done it, and others couldn't get onto it because it crashed.
There's nothing announced. Nothing's working. They've told us porcupine all the way down along. So at the moment,
Friday they've had the Cummings thing.
But at the moment, we have the Scottish government now ahead of the English government when it comes to testing people and isolating people, so that we can move on safely into the next phase of easing the lockdown.
Well, and the other thing about the Scottish government being slightly behind, they get to solve the mistakes that have been made. This double testing thing, where they've been counting the number of tests, not the number of people tested.
Sorry, I've just said Scotland are ahead of England, not behind.
Well, they are actually behind, in the sense that England are already publishing the number of tests done daily, right? And it turns out they haven't hit the 100,000 because they've been counting the swab from your nose and the swab from your throat as two different tests. So they've only been hitting 80,000.
No,
the government can avoid being caught out that way by simply counting the number of people that have been tested.
The clever thing is we've not gave a bloody stupid target like that. What she said and what she's delivered is capacity for 15,000 tests, 2,000 contact tracers, and a system that will start operating on Thursday. England doesn't have that, and they're 3 weeks ahead of us in terms of having eased the lockdown. We have put that in place when we go into phase 1 of easing.
But she's also laid the groundwork for that. Okay, you've only got 700 testers, and we're only doing 8,000 tests or whatever. And she's been laying the groundwork for a week on this one.
No, she's got she said today she's got 1,600 people already to go for testing.
Okay, Stuart, I won't bother.
No, she did. You obviously were a bit busy getting ready to do this.
Stuart, have you any idea what I just said?
You said she'd 700.
I was explaining what they're doing, laying the groundwork for the criticism that's inevitable from the press, which is they're not going to use 2,000 testers. There's not going to be a need because
going to have access to
coronavirus infection rate's going to drop off. And
well,
she's already saying that. She's these people.
Looking at the data they've already got, the number of deaths, the number of people in hospital, etc., it's looking as though they're not going to need, as you say, 2,000.
And
it also neatly spiked.
What I'm trying to point out is that the Scottish government are boxing a lot more cleverly, because they're laying the groundwork before it becomes a problem. They're already building their excuses.
This system looks watertight. Everything that she announced, everything that she said today is stuff that they've promised, that the Tories and Neil Findlay have been whining and whinging about, saying, when are you going to deliver it? When are you going to deliver it? And she's delivering it on Thursday, which is what? A few days before the end of the month, when she said that she would deliver it at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. So she's kind of spiked. Well, she spiked everything that Jackson Carlos had to say for about a week, because I think she's sensed the blood in the water that Jackson Carlo has problems as leader of the Scottish Conservatives. So the last 2 or 3 days, anything he's had to say in the morning, she's taken the opportunity of having the press in front of her at lunchtime to slap down Jackson Carlo. So anything he's got is getting done in quickly. Wonder when he'll run out of stuff to actually whinge about.
I know. And right now they're announcing the details of the transport issues involved with easing this lockdown. That's going on in Holyrood this afternoon.
That's going to be a difficult one, guys. Just as people return to work, and I know that now, this phase 1, we are not encouraging people to return to work in a way that they have in England. But as folk return to work, we've all seen how busy the trains are in Scotland. How on earth are we going to manage to run commuter trains at maybe 15, 20, 25% capacity? It's just not going to happen, is it?
The only way it could actually work is if you have a staggered work day. And as many people who are working from home keep working from home.
Yeah, see, I think you're right, she is boxing clever. She's already asked, weeks ahead of when most people will return to work, she's already asking for employers to consider things like real flexi time, 4-day weeks.
Aye.
And to be honest, given how many, we've already had companies like Lloyd's and Barclays say that the idea of putting 15,000 people in a big office blocks isn't something that they see happening again, because working from home has proved remarkably useful for a lot of these people. They're more productive when they're working from home. Maybe only do a 6-hour day, Nori, but they burst their hump for the 6 days because for the 6 hours, because for the other couple of hours they've got to look after their wains or whatever they do.
Aye, and they don't have an hour's travelling at either end of the day.
Aye.
It's working well for got to be healthier, mentally, physically, for your tiredness. So maybe you've got more energy, so you can put into 6 hours what normally you would take 10 hours to do.
Well, how many times have we said in the past that countries like Finland and Sweden and that, they lead the way in flexi working and stuff? And is it Finland or Denmark that's the happiest country on the planet? And they've been doing flexi working that for years.
Numbers for coronavirus in Norway?
It's minuscule, mate.
It's tiny, isn't it?
Aye. Well, that's why Sweden, a lot of people, the opponents of lockdown have long argued about how good Sweden's had it and that, and they've actually not, and they're really struggling now to the point where Denmark and Norway are opening up their borders, but not to Sweden. If you're Swedish, you're not getting across the border into Denmark or Norway at the moment.
All right. What about Greece? They've opened up their islands to tourists, but not from the UK.
Yeah, well, and Spain is opening up to everybody on July the 1st.
Aye, Spain's opening up to everybody in July. That'll be hilarious, actually. Not hilarious, but the English, you know how much the English love themselves and love their country. It'd be kind of funny if the whole of Europe opened up to everybody but people from the UK.
Shouldn't laugh. Well, that's pushing the time a bit there, guys. Anybody got anything to finish with?
No,
I thought you'd have funny there, Nori.
I have, but I was giving you everybody a chance to have the last say. Nope.
I'm fine today.
We'll finish with a parody today then. I'll just play out with it. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Nori Stewart. Thank you, folks, for listening, watching. And we'll no doubt catch up with you tomorrow.
Cheerio.
A wee funny for you to finish with. Oh, getting all mixed up here, guys.
Oh dear, we didn't want to see Michael again.
No, here we go. This is a parody of the Dominic Cummings presser yesterday.
It's surprising when you're making all the rules and it turns out you can't break them when you want. Been revising them to play you all for fools, 'cause I'm Bojo's bro and favourite confidant. Such a hassle, but the Tories have my back, 'cause I'm propping up this messed up government. Barnard Castle, so if they give me the sack, I'll just pop back up the A1 like a 'cause I would drive to 60 miles and I would drive to 60 more just to take my COVID-19 straight up north and right to Grandma's door. Blame the teachers, keep 2 meters, blame your children, Labour, Jeremy Corbyn too. Come on Bojo, screw the popo, What else is there a father supposed to do? Well, you could have just self-isolated like everyone else.
How to ensure people informed and access the financial support that's available, whether it's